As expected, after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, life in Syria has not only not improved, but has also deteriorated significantly. The Syrian alawites in the west, the druze in the south, and the Kurds in the north of the country, continue to demonstrate to the current Syrian authorities their unwillingness to submit to Damascus. All this suggests that the current Syrian authorities are unlikely to be able to preserve the country's unity and sovereignty. However, as current events show, the Syrian authorities, led by Ahmed al-Shara, are not going to give up, and are doing everything to ensure that Damascus does not lose the remaining parts of Syria. The recent conflict between government forces and Syrian alawites in the west, and Druze in the south, has once again proved that Syria is rapidly moving towards the division of the country. Meanwhile, the United States continues to set fire to Syria, poisoning not only Kurds and Syrian Sunnis against one another, but also Israel and Turkey. Washington is well aware that sooner or later, Turkey and Israel will go head-to-head in Syria, as Tel Aviv is not interested in strengthening Syria and its new pro-Turkish authorities. Israel, with Washington's help, will do everything to ensure that Syria never becomes a full-fledged state entity. And given the fact that neither Turkey nor Israel will be able to emerge victorious in this conflict, the armed confrontation on Syrian soil will continue for decades. By the way, this is very beneficial to the United States, as Washington is preparing to withdraw from Syria to focus on confronting its most formidable rival, China, which claims global leadership in all areas. At the same time, judging by what is happening, the United States is doing everything to leave Syria without losing face. Washington does not want to experience another humiliation like the one in Afghanistan. By the way, Washington is doing the same in Europe. The White House, realizing that the war in Ukraine has long been lost, is doing everything to leave Europe alone with Russia, and, at the same time, force Moscow to pay a heavy price for the Russian army's successes on the battlefield. Washington wants to ensure that the West's loss in Ukraine is attributed only to Europe, not the United States. However, unfortunately for the White House, it seems that Russia has once again decided to disrupt all U.S. plans, and prevent Washington from leaving Syria without losing face. It seems that Russia, even despite the high risk of the outbreak of World War III, has decided to finally finish off the Western globalists, and drive the last nail into the coffin of the unipolar world. Due to the ongoing hostilities in Ukraine, the world media began to pay less attention to the events taking place in Syria. Meanwhile, events in Syria are developing rapidly, and threaten to cause a third world war. So, a few hours ago, numerous Israeli sources declared that 3 Su-35 Russian fighter jets attacked the American military base al-Tanf, in South Syria. It is reported that the Russians notified the Pentagon 24 hours before launching the attack, so that the American soldiers had time to leave the territory of the military base. Al-Tanf is a United States military base within territory controlled by the Syrian opposition in Homs Governorate, located 24 kilometers west of the Al-Tanf border, crossing in the Syrian desert. The surrounding deconfliction zone is located along the Iraq and Jordan-Syria border. The garrison is located along a critical road, known as the M2 Baghdad-Damascus Highway. Moscow believes that the Americans are present in Al-Tanf military base illegally, and is trying in every possible way to squeeze out uninvited guests from there. However, if earlier Moscow used diplomacy for this purpose, now Russia has begun to use brute force. The situation in Syria is rapidly deteriorating. A week before the attack on the American military base, the commander of United States Central Command, Michael Kurilla, visited this military base. During his address to the American soldiers stationed at this military base, General Kurilla spoke extremely badly about the Russian command in Syria and urged the U.S. military to prepare for difficult times. Numerous Israeli media outlets, citing their sources in Mossad, claim that the Russians began to put pressure on the U.S. military along the entire front in Syria in order to create unbearable conditions for American soldiers. Israeli experts are confident that the aggravation between Russian and American soldiers in Syria is clearly connected with U.S. support for Ukraine. The Israelis are confident that because of the global problems that the United States has faced in Europe, the Indo-Pacific region, and its own economy, Washington will not raise the temperature in relations with Moscow in the Middle East. It is worth noting that this is the second time that Russian warplanes have attacked an American airbase in Syria. My dear truth seekers, let me remind you that in June 2022, two Russian combat planes, Su-24 and Su-35, also attacked an American military base in southern Syria. Back then, the Russian High Military Command stated that the main target of the Russian warplanes was pro-American militants, who regularly attacked combat posts of Russian troops and hit on the territory of the American base. It is reported that now, 3 years later, Russian combat planes have once again attacked pro-American militants, who regularly hide in southern Syria, on the territory of an American military base. However, the Israeli media claim that the Mossad is well aware of the true reasons for the Russian attacks on American military facilities in Syria. The Mossad has noticed a sharp increase in air incidents in Syria. Russian warplanes began flying dangerously close to American planes. Israel is confident that the more weapons Kiev receives from NATO, the more dangerous the situation becomes for the American military in the Middle East. Israeli think tanks claim that Moscow has begun exerting harsh pressure on the United States and Syria in order to create new contacts between the U.S. State Department and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, especially against the backdrop of signals from Tel Aviv that Iran continues to enrich uranium and that Tehran is one step away from joining the nuclear club. At the same time, Israeli experts express confidence that only Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, will be able to play a decisive role in resolving the current crisis in the Middle East. According to them, Moscow has a huge influence on Tehran, and that Vladimir Putin is skillfully playing the Iranian nuclear card, putting the Trump administration in front of a difficult choice. At the moment, the time has come for Washington to decide, which is more important for the United States: Israel's security, or the preservation of Ukrainian statehood. Israeli experts are sure that if Moscow has decided on a special operation in Ukraine, then Russia can easily decide to go on aggravation in Syria too. Against this background, many experts express confidence that Russia will continue to arm and strengthen the Syrian alawites in the west of the country. Currently, monitoring services are observing the rapid buildup of the Syrian alawites. It is well known that in western Syria, Russia has not only created a 15,000-strong army of Syrian alawites, but has also significantly enhanced this military force with experienced Syrian officers. In particular, sources within the Russian military department confirmed that Moscow appointed legendary Major General Sohail al-Hassan as the leader of this army. Israeli analytical centers are confident that if the Trump administration continues to issue ultimatums to Russia and demands major concessions from Putin on the Ukrainian issue, Moscow, with the help of the Syrian alawites, will launch an offensive in the eastern part of the country and force U.S. troops to flee from Syria, as shamefully as they did in Afghanistan. All this will not only completely finish off the Kiev regime, led by Volodymyr Zelensky, but will also significantly intensify the death throes of Western globalists and the collapse of the unipolar world.